we'll try this again. This is Anon. None of this is financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. There we go. Now we're back up and running. And hopefully you guys can actually hear me this time. Yo, what's up, Jerry? Sorry about that. That was some technical difficulties coming up. So basically what happened was my kids were playing with my computer and we were setting up a fun, I was trying to get them to have a good time with trying to pin this stuff. Come on. That didn't work right. There we go. There we go. Now we go. I hope Blindside isn't here tonight. I hope he is. I could care less, honestly. But yeah, I'm not sure what that guy's deal is. I'm just totally obsessed. If anyone needs underwear, ask Goat. He's got the good stuff. Yeah, sorry about that. So it's funny. I started telling the story. And let me do this. Let me go through my YouTube real quick and make sure that I delete the old video so that people don't get confused. All right, here we go. Let's get rid of that quick 6-minute video, which had nothing on it because you guys couldn't hear me. There we go. So I was telling you guys a story that you never heard, so I'm going to try it again once we get a couple more people on here. So let me delete this one off. I do not want to monetize it. I want to get rid of it. Delete forever. I understand deleting is permanent and can't be done. Yep, I'm good with that. Okay. Let's try that again. So now we're live. Everything's good. Testes, 1, 2, 3. Yes, yes. Okay, so the story I was telling was basically my wife had told me I needed to get out of the house. Oh, don't worry about Armistice. They have another 7 million shares they can acquire between them and High Trail, so they'll have plenty of room to come back in. Like I said, I'm pretty sure Armistice was there to make a quick buck. And they did, and now they have another chance to run things up again, and that's my guess of what they're going to try to do. You have to remember, these guys basically go both ways. So their only goal is to make money. They could care less how they make it, right? They don't care about the company long term. They lent the money to the company knowing that they'd be able to pay it back. And they give them basically shares for it. So what they do with those shares? They make money off of it. I get it. All right. So they knew that there was a good amount of retail support. They knew that if they bought in, then other people would be able to, they're by stock show. It's a fun way of putting it, yeah. All right. So let's take a look at 13Fs if you want to. Who holds the most Ethereum now? BlackRock actually holds the most Ethereum now, besides MacArthur. Yeah, my guess would be they probably exited at 6, 7. They were the ones selling. Oh, good. You can hear me? What's up, Hustle? What's up, guys? All right. So I called out all your names in the beginning, so let me do it again. Jerry, Awesomeness, Hothead, Jonathan, J-Thom, Carl, Random, Goat, J-Dill, Matt, 617 Boston, The Branded State, CJ. What's up, all you guys? Okay, yeah, so this was one of my suspicions, was that High Trail were the ones that sold back at the top, right? When it ramped to 7, they basically had bought the shares down here at 290, and they unloaded them at the top. And then at that point, they were able to push down the price. And there was obviously the element of also them flooding the market with those shares allowed the shorts to cover, right? So the stock dropped. Now we accumulate for a while. Now we're starting to push back up. You know why? Because they want the rest of the shares. In like 2-3 weeks, they'll be able to unlock the next set of shares. And obviously, for a lot of hedge funds, they're going to want to make money as soon as they can. So we'll see. I mean, we also had earnings that was pretty positive. They talked about M&A, despite whatever articles I've seen. So, yeah, there's a couple things going on here. And maybe they want to hold these long term. Who knows? But we know the first round, they were able to basically pump up the stock, unload at the top, and then they basically pushed the price down. This is just obviously for Ethereum. There's a ton of other tickers that are moving, so we probably need to cover all of them. I know BBBY is a big one that most people want to hear about, so we can do that too. But yeah, obviously Ethereum had a nice day. It was 7% for the day. We haven't seen that in a while, But if you look overall, we're starting an uptrend, so that's a good thing. This is a critical line. You see, I already had a pre-drawn line here, right? This is a Fibonacci line right here. That's that's a special place. So we'll see what it does tomorrow. If it continues through back test and heads up, that's a good sign. That means they're obviously doing this. We could see them pump it down for a little bit this is basically when their warrants are going to be able to get unlocked. Is right here. So could we see some consolidation around this time? Sure. So, yeah, DTC is definitely accumulating. You are correct, Hustle. WEBR has been interesting. I have shares of theirs and also some calls for December. But yeah, I just want to point out this. So we consolidated around here. We pushed up. This was resistance. We broke through. Now we're sitting here at the top here. Question is, will we get continuation? Will we backtest and head up, or will we reject and consolidate around this area, or head down back to this 93 area? Yeah, they don't need the money currently, and they're getting the earnings. I think was more positive than a lot of people want to give it credit for. They sounded more confident in the last earnings call than they have in literally like a year. Excuse me, I'm still drinking. So the story I didn't tell you guys was my wife wanted me out of the house, so I went out and hit some balls on the golf course and had a couple of buddies of mine meet me out there, and it was good. It was a good time. So got out of the house for the first time in a while, and because normally I come home, I eat dinner with the kids, put them to bed, and then I come down here. So this was a nice, little break. So, let's see. Something about ATER. They don't need money currently. They have cash on hand, which brings up their book value. Yeah. So, we're going to find out real quick. To me, Armistice Capital is just playing this as a short-term thing. They invested in them, they made some money, and then that's fine. I actually don't mind that. I would rather actually have long-term investors, I'll pull it over, like BlackRock, Vanguard. I mean, Susquehanna's got calls on this now, State Street. Obviously they're going to hedge themselves. So, but if you look, they have more calls than they have puts. So they're going one side. Even Citadel actually has calls and more calls than puts because the puts are down here. So some of these hedge funds are actually in on Ethereum, interestingly enough. So just pointing that out. Yeah, I mean, Ethereum, like I said, is one of the more they're a very manipulated stock, and these hedge funds know when they can push things up and down on things, right? So, they didn't have a horrible earnings, so what do? They're going to push it up. It is what it is. And so you can see Susquehanna and Citadel are both, Susquehanna here, and they do have puts, but, Citadel has calls on this thing, and they have more calls than puts, so we can check on shares as well, but I know some people were like, what happened to Armistice? I'm like, yeah. They clearly sold at the top, and then we're always a little bit behind on the filings. You have to remember, they only have to file like once a quarter. So, like, yeah. Once again, this is one of those things where, like, they don't care about the individual stock. They want to make money. So this shows you that those two companies want to make money on the Ethereum. They're net long on Ethereum. So, yeah. I know everyone hates the hedge funds, but I'm just saying sometimes they're the ones pumping things up. So, like, there are people going along on Ethereum at this point. Okay. I do want to cover also DTC, because DTC to me is super interesting because this was an earnings beat, right? They talked about expanding into Australia, UK, and Canada during this call. The growth seems decent. The balance sheet looks okay. There's obviously some concern about global, like macro stuff, but like that's for every stock across the board. That's not specific to DTC, Solo Brands. So what I found interesting was this, right? So if you kind of look at this I think I did this earlier. Yeah. So I'm just going to bring up a couple things. So let me pull up a Wyckoff accumulation chart. Wyckoff accumulation. There we go. Okay. So I'll go over the basics of this just so you guys can see, and then we can go into how this all works. But this is something I find very important, especially for a stock ticker like this, right? So I'm going to pull over. Here we go. I'm grabbing everything but the one I want. All right. So Wyckoff price cycles go like this. As the stock gets pushed down, it gets into oversold territory, and this is where institutions accumulate, right? So they accumulate the shares, and it's not a straight line. It's not like this solid like this. It's always more choppy. But the overall idea is that you accumulate down here. They start slapping the ask here. This is when retail FOMO's in. Because remember, on every single trade, right? Every single trade, there's winners and there's losers. So let's take a look at DTC to kind of drive home this point. DTC, if we zoom out, let me do this log scale. I just want to show you kind of, let's put the weekly. So DTC was sitting in the 20s, right? And it's just been pushed down, pushed down, pushed down. This is accumulation. And notice it started going back up. They had an earnings beat, but they got pushed back down. Why? Because when you look at Wyckoff, you will notice that there's patterns that they always have a push up to the support or resistance lines. They get pushed back down, and then they usually hit a spring, and then they fly straight up. So let's do this back on the daily. Right? So this is back here in the 20s. They got pushed down, pushed down, pushed down, pushed down. Now why? Because a lot of institutions want to accumulate the shares down in this range. So let's go over this again. So oversold, right? Gets sit here in the oversold. Now, when they're in their positions, they bought calls, they hedge to the downside, they have long shares that they've been acquiring during this time. What they start doing is they start slapping the ask with the algorithm, right? What happens when you slap the ask? It starts driving up the price. Now, for them, they don't need a ton of volume to do this. They can slap the ask and make a stock run on very little volume, especially ones that are not getting a ton of volume anyway. All you have to do is spend a couple $100,000 and just slap the ask, and you can drive the price 15, 20, 30% on a small cap stock like DTC, especially one that doesn't get a ton of volume anyway. So as you start driving up the price, right, now let's say we're in the, 8 to 10 range, right? If they want to start selling their stock because they bought it down here in the 3s and the 4s and the 5s, they can now quickly profit if they feel like it. If I'm just throwing out numbers. I don't know exactly what number they're going to end up distributing at, but I just want to drive home the point of what this is how the market works. Smart money tricks retail into selling. They buy the shares, and then when they push the price up by slapping the ask, they start getting retail to FOMO in. This is when retail FOMO's in, that retail's FOMOing in, and then they sell these shares into retail's FOMO, and then they drop the price and then short it back down typically. That's what hedge funds do at least. So, like I said, I want to cover this because I think it's an important thing that most people should learn is when you have accumulation and distribution, it's whether you're buying shares or you're like selling shares, right? So accumulation means that institutions and other people are accumulating the shares, and then when they're selling them, that's when retail's like at their like most confident, and literally they're selling them underneath retail. So let's go back and let me pull up the other schematics. So here is Wyckoff distribution. Oops, sorry. This keeps grabbing the wrong screen for some reason. Okay, here we go. So you have a rundown, right? So you get pushed down, pushed down, pushed down, right? You hit this baseline of support, and it bounces off nicely, right? You have an auto rally is what it's called. You come back down for a spring test, and it pushes back up to a higher level of resistance, and it rejects heavily and short usually, and it gets run down, and it will break through usually the first level of support. At that point, there will be a spring test, at least on schematic 1, right? So once these guys have driven out most of retail during this down phase, when they're like, oh, maybe the stock's not as good as I thought, we're getting lower lows, this is the lower low, then retail freaks out, they sell, and this is when they buy the heaviest. So they hit the spring test and they push the price up heavily, right? So the stock will chop around these support lines. You head down one more time possibly for the last spring test, and then that's when they really push it up. Right? And there's another one, which is the second chart, which I'll pull up for you. Now, I feel like they do 2 more than 1 usually, but it can really depend on the stock. So, same thing. You get pushed down, you bounce off, you hit the auto rally, spring test up to the next resistance line, and then this is the biggest drop you get. The spring test in phase B is the largest one you get. After that, you'll accumulate in this channel, right, until they run it up. So the reason why I put this there to show you guys is look at these charts. Keep in mind what they're doing. And I want you to see this is $20 a share right here. This is $20. They drove this thing down all the way down to the $4 or $5 range. Right, they had a couple dips into the 3s, and then I drew these lines out to kind of drive the point home. These 2 purple lines are the support lines that I drew out for Wyckoff. Kind of notice something? This was an area of support, turned into resistance, drives down, right? Hits the bottom here, bounces off, bounces up, down, consolidation. Now it's hitting these upper lines again, right? Trying to break through. And what's happening? It's rejecting down. My guess would be, and this is obviously speculation, but we're going to either see the last part where it bounces off one of these averages and heads straight through, or it's going to break down possibly for the last spring test, depending on where we think we are on the Wyckoffs. So it's either going to break through and go, or it's going to head down into one of these support lines for the last spring test, possibly this 369. I don't know if we're going to get the double bottom because we almost had it here and then here. But I'm just kind of pointing out to you guys that like this looks like Wyckoff to a T, which means that this stock at some point is going to just run. So That's my opinion, obviously. None of this is financial advice, but I'm just pointing out, to me, this looks a lot like Wyckoff. To I mean, push down, up, hits the support line, comes back down, coming up here, breaks through the top one, but it's getting rejected. Let's see what happens. Obviously, tomorrow is going to be, into this week is going to be very important to see what happens. It's either going to bounce off one of these two like moving averages, or it's going to like just go through. So, have the 13Fs come out for DTC? That's a good question. I don't think I'd looked, to be honest with you, but we can pull it up right now and see if anything's been filed. All right. Oh, sorry. My back is hurting. I went golfing, so I hit some balls in the driving range. It's been a while. I'm sore. Oddly enough, right? Random. Aren't we at the warrant price already? Are you talking about Ethereum? Yeah. So Ethereum, the warrant prices are $320. We finished $321, but they are not eligible to exercise them for another couple weeks. I believe the September 4th or 6th or something like that was the day that those warrants are ready. So we're at the warrant price. My guess would be they would probably drive the price up so that way when they unlock those warrants, they could do it. Are you drunk? I've had some cocktails. I mean, I was on a golf course, so yeah, I had a couple of beers. Can you guys tell? September 6th. Yeah, I was close. 4th or the 6th, right? Yeah. I would say I'm feeling loose. And I'm drunk. Woo. Figured it's a little more amusing listening to me like this, right? What's up, Marine? What's up, Mass? What's up, VN Express? Shoddy? No, I'm not like drunk, but I did have some cocktails, so scotch it up, Anon. I'll get at my 151. Oh, okay. Watermelon energy drink. What is the watermelon energy drink? I'm curious about that. I have like watermelons that I grew in my garden. We're just starting to eat those. You guys like watermelon? Okay, let's see. Get another scotch, not life advice. All right. If you want to know what the worst thing about being drunk, ask a glass of water. Anon alcoholic drink? No, not me. Yeah, so I basically just had I text one of my buddies and I was like, listen, like, probably need to start like doing some stuff for myself again, trying to regain that I used to go out all the time. I used to be part of like sports leagues and stuff like that, and I've kind of let all that stuff go after having kids. And my wife's like, you used to really enjoy that stuff and being out with people and talking. And I'm like, well, I get to talk to my people on YouTube, and she's like, but you're not getting like the full interaction that you normally do. I'm like, well, I'm kind of getting it, but my sister has 30 watermelons. Is she single? Oh, you guys are trouble. Who's marrying into Random's family? She's married and doing well. Sorry, goat. It's not gonna work. I got 2 Gorilla Glues Girl Scout cookies in my garden. Anyway, we obviously lost a little bit of where we were going with this, but I want to point out Wyckoff because I think it's important. I think DTC is going through it textbook-wise. I think Ethereum is right now at warrant levels. My guess would be, like I told you guys a couple of weeks ago, I think they're going to try to drive the price up. That way when the warrants are able to be unlocked, they can get them out. So that's been my kind of like recent thesis. Obviously, the short interest on these stocks has been pretty much like it's been about the same. I'm pulling it up right now for you guys, but I think we had like 8 or 9 million as of last update. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah, about 8.5 million shares short, which is about 30% of the float. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, so it makes sense if you guys think about it, right? So, like, I know the initial thing was like, okay, Ethereum's going to squeeze the moon. It, if it gets enough options interest, it will probably gamma squeeze again to a point. But obviously, they have shares that they can unload, and that's the thing that we didn't really anticipate last time, which was the private placement shares. I didn't think they could use right away, and that was probably a big mistake of mine, which was I thought that there was more upside with the gamma ramp, and not realizing that Armistice was able to basically use those pre-funded warrants, which you can exercise at any time. I didn't think they would want to do it then, but now thinking back, it makes sense why they did it, because they got it up to 7, they unloaded those up there, and then they pushed the stock down because they knew they were going to accumulate the shares down here and then probably do it again. So yeah, so if you look here, obviously your days to cover has gone up, I think. All right, so days to cover on loan, days to cover up again. That was the 2-week. Right, so utilization's coming back up, right? We had that weird dip for a couple of days, and then it's right back up to 100. Down here we see availability. They have more shares available, which, is interesting because like we haven't had that many shares in a while, which means does that mean that shorts are starting to slowly close out their positions because they don't want to be short on the Ethereum anymore? It's interesting. So it's a thought. It could just be the Armistice people are trying to push it up and then get it, their warrants to unlock at 320. Or is it the fact that some of these shorts are going, okay, it looks like they're going to weather the storm. We don't really want to be this short anymore. We've made our money. We're going to start covering. And so they start, covering a couple 100,000 shares every once in a while. It will drive up the price of the stock. And so Scooby says, ruh-oh. No, I mean, so let's double check against Fintel, because I just looked at the Whale Wisdom, but let's take a look at Fintel real quick. Okay, so Fintel, let me get up. Let's do ATER. Yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, Michael Burry sold all of his shares of everything except for one stock, which means that he's basically shorting the entire market. Just throwing that out there. I know you guys have heard me say that the market's overpriced and that this is not a real rally. It's on low volume, and this is them just basically burning puts. But there we go. All right. So getting back to this, let's go to owners and institutions. All right, so we're going to sort by shares. Yeah, so it looks like before the biggest sole, I guess, institution was actually Armistice before, and they are no longer. But if you look, BlackRock, let's see. BlackRock is now the number 1. Vanguard is number 2. This is the MP. That's so these shares are included in this number. But Susquehanna looks like they went long, interesting enough. Yeah, Susquehanna has a bunch of calls, which means they think that the stock's going to go up, and they hedged it with these puts, but that's more calls than puts, so they're net long on Ethereum as of the last filing, the 13F filing, and same with Citadel actually, which is interesting because they were short at one point, so that's interesting that they have more calls than they do puts. And Susquehanna has another couple shares here. I went up there. And then Armistice, let's see where they are. Probably faster to do it this way. Yeah, they sold every single share they had, which was 5 million shares. So you guys want to know why the squeeze got killed? It was Armistice Capital. But they have the ability to have another, 5 or 6 million shares. So, yeah, I'd rather have BlackRock's and Vanguard's owning the stock than a bunch of hedge funds that are going to yo-yo it back and forth. Michael Burry stole his positions as of the last 13F filing. So whatever date he has to file by, that's when he reported all of his selling. And he's probably net short. So, yeah, Armistice was the one that basically killed the squeeze at 7. No, I mean, so you have to remember, this is a snapshot of things that already happened. Like, we don't get live data on what these hedge funds and other people are doing. So, like, I want to drive home this point. Like, at first, Armistice had the largest position in Ethereum. They sold out every single share at probably like 6, 7, maybe in the 5s. And why? Because they're going to have another set of shares that they were able to basically buy at 320. So, yeah, like they knew they were going to get another, I don't know, like 5 or 6 million shares. So, and then they could do it again. So I told you guys my theory was that they were going to basically run up and down the stock, yo-yo it. And that's kind of what they did. So, anyway. So yeah, there's a tiering. I'm expecting this to probably move up because if they're going to unlock those warrants, they're going to need to have at least some cushion because if not, it will go back down and then they need to exercise it above 320. Well, this is 320, so if they need to exercise it above 320, they need to drive the price of the stock up. Exactly. That's right, Jake. So they have another 7 million warrants. And I don't know how many High Trail has and how many they have exactly, but let's just say they have another 6 million warrants, right? So they sold their 5 million warrants. That way they stay under the 10%, the 9.99%, which they like to be, because if you have over 10% ownership in any company, you have to explain when you unload your position, because you can obviously affect the markets when you are a major shareholder. And then, so what they like to do is they like to stay under 10%, because if not, at that point, they don't have to deal with the SEC. So, hey, what's going on? All right, see some familiar faces. We got Shoddy Mass, we've got Jake, we've got Becca, hello. We've got Hustle, we got Dirty is in here with Senior Sukoburo. But yeah, like these are all important things that we need to like understand and recognize, and it will make us better traders. And that's kind of like the goal for this entire Discord and these YouTube videos, is just trying to educate people on how all this stuff works. You can hear the liquor. Yeah, I mean, I can feel the liquor, so feeling real loose. All right, we're good. Wait till. All right. Every like gets, Anna gets an equal penny. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to you guys about this before, and I don't mind sharing it, but like, people were, I will never understand the people that thought that I'm doing this for the money. I'm like, you guys have no idea. Like, look at this. I don't think I'm showing anything, but like I'll make $43 in an entire month. Over 28 days, I'll make $43 off YouTube. Like all the money that came in from the Patreon has been used to basically buy Ortex, Dilution Tracker, Fintel, Unusual Whales. I have Morningstar and a couple other like third party like apps. Like Becca coincidentally only shows up on Uptrends. Hey, she's been busy at work. You guys know this. Becca is a nurse and she's doing a very important job. And so she doesn't need to show her face in here all the time. We appreciate her being around. Sorry. I'm drinking my beer. Okay. ATER price target is $43. Maybe in a couple years. Not right now, but, at $43, the market cap wouldn't make sense. But in a couple years from now, sure. Like, if it grows accordingly, then yes. A bunch of simps. You guys are funny. You give it to them, Becca. You give it to them. All right, so here we go. We pulled over Tyrion. We kind of showed the thing on there, right? So we were going to pull up DTC, though, as well, because I think it'd be interesting to see if any 13Fs have come out on DTC. I know for a fact that Osprey, I think it's called, they sold for a loss, which I don't even get. Like, they must have been offsetting some like stuff for tax reasons. Okay, so let's see. Institutional ownership. So these are, I think, insiders for the most part. These guys are gone now. They have like a 400K position, if I remember correctly. So let's see if we got any changes, major changes here. Okay, Summit still owns 44 million shares. Bertram still owns, looks like 11, almost 12 million shares. Neuberger still owns almost 7 million. American Century Companies, almost 3 million. This is an end port, so that must be part of some sort of fund. Same with this one. Maybe it's one of these two. Vanguard, maybe? No, those numbers are bigger than that. So it has to be maybe this American Century Companies. Can I pick your brain in regards to AMC? I received an email stating that they had shut off DRS from August 12th to the 24th. Why? Okay, so I think they're learning a lesson from GameStop. From what I remember, GameStop had a bunch of people who had issues. Their brokers had issues when they issued out the dividend. And what ended up happening was, because they were like in limbo, they didn't know where to distribute the shares. So essentially what happened was a bunch of people that were buying GameStop and then transferring it through DRS were not receiving their shares because they were kind of like in between the two brokerages. Because essentially when you leave a brokerage with those DRS shares, you're basically putting them in your own name. But the process takes about a day. And so if you were issuing that during that time, that's going to cause a problem. So loaded underwear. Now that's a good idea. Everyone seems to have their panties in a bunch over Ape. Yeah, so I think that's probably why they would shut down the DRS during those dates, just to make sure that they don't have any like overlaps or like things that get missed. That would be my like common sense kind of thing, like why that would happen. Okay, so I just want to point this out. There was a conversation that we had inside of the war room, which is where I basically brought the accountants and was trying to like figure out, certain aspects. Anyone that's a basically anyone that basically has contributed to the Patreon, I allowed people to look in that. So I don't know if you guys ever noticed, but I added a private room where the CPA and two accountants, someone has a master's in accounting, and then the other one is an accountant and teaches at a Canadian university. Um, I don't. I won't give up their names, but if you want, if you're able to, if you've been in, obviously a Patreon member, I'm trying to give you guys some things that are different than the average things. Just I appreciate it. So I'm giving you access to that war room right now, where I'm kind of like working on different floats and different things with accountants and getting kind of their perspective, which I think is important. And I promise I'll share that with the rest of everyone else. But I wanted to give the people that have, obviously stuck with me and, give them a little bit of, just like a, hey, at least you can see what I'm talking to these guys about. So there's transparency there. So if you are a bronze or a server booster or anyone that's contributed in any way or shape or form, you are able to get into the war room and take a look at some of the conversations there. But anyway, inside there, we talked about AMC and we actually talked about APE. And I think we kind of established that. Oops, let me pull up APE. It's a way of dilution without dilution because they're like, I think they're premier shares. Is that what they're called? Pulling it up right now. What's a private room called? I think I called it the War Room. It's not a great name, but like it was just for me to talk to the accountants. And so if you guys ever have any questions you want to ask the accountants, obviously that's up to them if they want to answer or not. But it seemed like they've been all good sports about like, sharing what they know. How many pots do you have to sell to pay the mortgage? Well, I don't make pottery, but yeah. Watching pottery vids is a visual ASMR for me. Okay. Instead of hearing my voice, do you want me to just talk over the pottery videos? I can be like this. Hey, guys. Hold on, let me clear my throat. Anon's going to do the voiceover for DIY pottery videos. This is Cool FM, bringing you the smoothest jazz. All right, so let me see if I can find. But basically, I talked to them about the APE dividend, and I thought that was interesting because these are CPAs and accountants, and they're basically sharing with me their thoughts on like how this all kind of fits together. And the goal is to get more and more of these guys. I would love, if you guys know accountants, I would love for you guys to have them come into our group and share their knowledge. Because I took accounting like accounting 101, accounting 102, accounting 200, accounting 201, and I took a 300 level accounting class. I did not enjoy accounting. That was not my favorite subject. And it's funny because now I actually use it. And so not in my like everyday life, but like when I do this stuff, like literally you're having to do accounting. Like you have to understand how to read a balance sheet, all these things. And this is not like my favorite subject. So the fact that these guys all have like a master's in science and accountancy, another guy's got a CPA, certified financial accountant. Yeah, that's right. Right, certified public accountant. And then the other guy is a teacher of accounting. So like we have 3 people in our group that are like great resources for us. So let me just see. I'm trying to find the section where we talked about APE. dividend, because I think that would be helpful for some people, hearing what a CPA has to say about that. We've been talking about a lot about DTC. Maybe it was just a private conversation. Let me see if I can go back. Where was my conversation with... Somewhere we talked about it. I know we did. I don't know where it is right now, but I will try to find that conversation and loop you guys in. Take a drink. Everyone says the Muffin Man. The Muffin Man? Do you know the Muffin Man? I raise unicorns for top dollar. That's the thing. You got to sell it. You sell those unicorns, right, Greg? Okay. Let's get back on track. Sorry. Do you know the Muffin Man? My daughter came up to me. I was sleeping. She said that to me, and it cracked me up. Like, I was literally in a dead sleep. It's like 2 a.m, and my daughter walks up to me. She's like, Daddy. I'm like, what? She goes, do you know the Muffin Man? Just lost it. Drink. Oh. That includes me, right? All right. Anyway, here's DTC. Let's go through. I'm telling you guys, I think this is accumulation to a T. And you can see right here, these guys sold all but, like, they took a huge loss on this thing. Like, I don't know why they did this, to be honest with you, unless they had stuff to offset it with. But, like, they sold, like, 3 million shares. For they bought in at 15, and they sold at, like, I don't know, like 5. He's good people, the Muffin Man. All right, we're making drinking games out of Muffin Man. All right, I like it. Let's keep it going. So these guys right here, minus off here, because I think they were established they are not an insider. These other ones are insiders. This Jam Brothers, Bertram, and Summit. So I think what Ortex is doing is they are basically taking all the Class A's and all the Class B's and lumping them together because they're technically exercisable to become Class A's. So I think that's what they're doing. So I think what we established was, and I'll pull up my chart real quick, or my spreadsheet. Type in DTC, reboot. Okay. So I think what they did was they combined these Class A and Class B shares here. So if you combine the two, you get 94 million. And if you actually add up all the institutional ownership and the insiders, you get like 80, I think it's like 80 million, like 80.5. And that would leave you with a float of 14 million, right? And that actually lines up pretty well with Ortex's numbers on DTC. Like the normal people that hang out with us, they probably are amused by the stream. Everyone else is like, this is the most scattered, like, cluster. All right. So, as you can see, if I go to overview, they have it at 14.8 million for the free float. That's pretty close to what I got when I did the... So this is how I think they're doing it. I don't know if this is actually correct or not. I talked to the accountants, and they were like, I don't think that's right, but, like, that's how they're doing it. So the float actually may be smaller, but 14 million shares is not a huge float. So that's pretty, like, that's a stock that will move if you give it some volume, because there's not a ton of shares remaining. Like, at what, $5? Is that where we're at right now? Like $5 on DTC, right? 536. So if we took out a calculator and said that like if you put out $2.8 million worth of cash, you could acquire all those shares. So just throwing it out there. Like, there's not a ton of liquidity, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future with this stock, because I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to get pushed down, they're going to consolidate or right around this area, and then they're going to take off at some point back into this range right here. So yeah, when DTC calls get cheap, I'm buying the farthest out they have, which is, I believe, it's like February, if I remember correctly, on DTC. I think it's February 2023. Let's check. It's more fun when you're drunk. We should make this the norm. I'm in a good mood. What can I say? All right, combined accounts. I'm doing okay. I'm just pulling up something real quick. Look at that. You know what? Good for my daughter. Mass, I actually thought you were the bad influence forcing everyone else to drink with you. All right, so I'm just going to give my daughter props. My daughter right now is up 19.77% on Ethereum. She doesn't have a very big position, but I had her averaging down when it was in the twos, so she is up on her trade on Ethereum. She is up 36% on GameStop, and she is up 105% on her Bed Bath & Beyond. Anon, are you referring to warrants as Class B exercise to Class A? No, I'm actually not. So let me do this. Let me clarify. We're talking about DTC, Mass. So DTC has an unusual float. And the reason I say it's unusual is because there are many stocks out there that don't deal with any Class B shares. And Class B shares are typically reserved for insiders. Sometimes they have less voting rights. Sometimes they have more voting rights. It really depends on how the company is structured during their IPO or whatever. So, in this case, Solo Brands, DTC, they have Class A shares. There are 63 million Class A shares. There's an additional, 30-something million. Thanks to Daddy Anon. I think he favors his daughter over us. Yeah, I do. I favor both my kids over all you guys. No offense, but, that's unconditional love. Straight up, there's nothing like the love of your children. And I know not everyone's a parent, and some people will never be parents, but I do really appreciate and love being a parent. And my kids are great, and I love them to death. Anyway, back to this, though. So Class A shares are what you normally deal with, right? Class B shares are usually reserved for insiders or people who want to get paid out in the the event of a liquidity situation where the company's liquidating. In some ways, it's a safer bet. A lot of times, it doesn't come with the same perks and voting rights, but I'm not disowning you guys. Calm down. I am having another drink, though. All right. Scotch. Yeah, you should have washed the dishes. Why is it saying this? This information is hidden? But I'm a premium member. Okay, so let's try this again. Class A's are what you see here. These are the Class A shares. If you go into a DTC filing, you know what? We can easily pull this up. Let's pull up dilution tracker real quick. All right, here we go. And if we put in DTC, you're going to find that they actually don't have any dilution because they have never filed any warrants. They have never filed. They just had their initial S1 that came out with their IPO, and they have never filed. So this is why I like these guys, because they have literally no dilution on the table. Okay. Notice here, they think the float is 33 million. The reason why they're doing that is probably because all they did was they took, let me show you how this works. So if I go to holders, right, Summit has 44 million shares, right? Bertram has 11 million. Neuberger has 6.8. They have almost 3 million. So if you went here and you looked at like the breakdown, this obviously adds up to more than 63 million. It's because most of these are a combination between Class A's and Class B's. And this is a little bit confusing for some people that aren't used to dealing with this, but let me just try to show you. So if you go here and we hit Control F and do, let's type in shares outstanding. Oop, that S is important. Shares outstanding. Here we go. Right? You see the 63 million there, right? Now, notice this, though. If I type in Class B units, you'll see right here that Solo Brands has this is part of their when they bought Oru, I think that's how you pronounce it, Oru, or something like that. That's the kayak company. They gave them a certain amount of Class B shares, which are the insider shares that can be converted over to Class A if they want to. They also did it for their Solo Stove people. They did it for Chubbies. They get Class B shares as well. And they did it also for, what was their other brand? It's like paddleboard and kayaks. But anyway, so Class B shares are typically for insiders, which means they don't usually sell those, right? So the point I'm making here is right here. There were 63 million Class A's, and then there was an additional 31 Class B shares. So you have to group these almost like insider shares. But if you combine these two numbers, what you get, though, is that like 94 million shares, which I showed you here. The 94 million, right? So here is your Class A's, here's your Class B's. 63 million, 31 million. Combined together, and that's how they're getting this float. This is how Ortex is doing it. I don't know if this is correct or not, but this is how they're doing it. Normally, with most stocks, you only have Class A's. I shouldn't say normally. Most of the time, you have just Class A's, and you might have a couple Class B's, but they're not like a huge amount. This company, though, is not the normal structure. In fact, our CPA guy and our accountants are all like, there's a lot going on here. Nothing wrong with it. It's just, it's more like corporate friendly and not so much like retail, like, oh, well, we have this many shares, this is the float, you know. But they aren't Class A's until exercised. That is correct. Now, warrants are different. So now we're going to move on to warrants. So here's ATER. Warrants are kind of like long calls that a company issues out, but directly to usually some sort of, warrants can be sold on the open market, but they also can be sold directly to a company through a private placement or etc. Abnormally, you confuse people asking if you know the Muffin Man. Did I make everyone drink saying the Muffin Man? But yeah, so warrants typically, though, are just like long call options, but they're dilutive by nature. So if you have warrants, they will reduce the overall shares value, because basically what you're doing is you're making a pie, and you're making the slices thinner. I like to use the pizza analogy for newers. I said newers. People who are newer to stocks. I like to use the pizza analogy because I feel like, I'm going to go old school on you guys. I'm going to pull up Paint. Not Paint D3. Oh my God, they don't have regular paint? No, I have to have regular paint on here. Paint. Here we go. At some point, I'm going to get a thing I can draw on, but for now, I'm just have to do it like this. Okay. So imagine you've got a pizza, right? Here's our abnormally shaped pizza. So typically what you do is you have slices, right? And you've got these slices here. Here we go. Right? So let's pretend this was Ethereum, because a lot of people are in Ethereum that listen to this channel. So in this case, we've got these slices, right? So what happens with dilution is this. The overall pie stays relatively the same. Like the pies, like we went from, let's say, 50 million to 68 million, right? All that really happened was they reduced the value of these slices, right? So all of a sudden now your slices are a little bit smaller, and obviously when you make something smaller, the overall value, gets obviously diluted, because now each one of your shares is worth slightly less. So every time they dilute, right? Hold on. You guys are. Anon doesn't speak for 3 seconds, and you can hear him sneaking a drink. Okay, you caught me. Mom, his slice is bigger than mine. Does it have pineapple? Buffalo chicken. Okay. What do you guys want me to put on this thing? I mean, obviously, my drawing is going to be awful no matter what I do. Like, I could put pepperonis on. Those are easy. Okay, so getting back to this. So with dilution, you're making each slice slightly smaller, right? So like your value goes down as you slice up this pie smaller, right? That's why for them to raise the actual market cap of a company, you have to become a lot more profitable. That way your slices are obviously more, they'll regain their value. The reason I'm just putting this out there is essentially because of there's an abnormal slice in the middle because the pizza guy. Yeah, okay. I actually see it now that you're calling it out. The middle is all jacked up, but the essence is the same. So with warrants, what you're doing is you all of a sudden you're increasing the amount of shares, which means that you're reducing the size of each slice. Okay, so overall it didn't change too much, but at the same time it does matter, because obviously dilution is a critical thing to understand, especially with small caps, because most of the time they don't have lenders just kicking down the door to get them money like you would with Apple or a Fortune 500 company. For some of these small caps, their only options are lenders who are going to charge them more than your average lender, or them diluting their shares. So when you look at a stock like BBIG, right, they've been having obviously some issues, but they massively diluted their shares over the course of. So this was the run up 10, right? Or 12. But what you'll find is if you looked at dilution tracker, and I'll pull it out for you guys. I'm going to type in BBIG. Sorry. Long day. BBIG. All right. I want you to look at this chart right here, and I want you to look at this. So you had very little dilution in the beginning. There's 18, 19. You went from basically 3 million shares up to, and this is over like 4 years. You increased it from 3 million up to 14 million shares. That's significant. Well, here's the problem. When they went to raise cash, they diluted the crap out of their company. So you went from basically a stock that had 3 million shares, and this is during the run-up, I think, roughly here. When people started squeezing BBIG, it only had 30 million shares. Well, quickly overnight, they diluted the crap out of it. They went from 30 million shares outstanding to 100 million shares. 107, technically. Yeah, it grinds down the stock price, if you want to put it that way. But here's the thing. It's an exchange. So your warrants raise cash, and hopefully the company can use that cash to make money in the future. If they can use that money wisely and make money in the future, then it's not really dilutive because you're adding, like value. But if all you're doing is diluting and nothing ever comes of your money that's being spent, then obviously, yeah, you're going to have a huge problem, because this is the type of thing that will happen, which is if you just keep diluting, and there's no way of actually raising your revenue, then you're going to have a huge issue. So now they've got an additional 6 million in warrants and another 28 million convertible notes on top of the 233 million. And this is not me picking on them. I'm just showing you an example of how much dilution matters, because when you jump from basically 14 million shares outstanding to over 200 million, when you start raising money and start they've got cash, right? Like they raised at one point like $120 million cash. They had like almost 200 million here. But what's been happening is they've been burning it, right? They've been burning, and now they only have 93 million, and they're burning right now $42 million a quarter. Introduced this time, I just yawning, sorry. Okay. My point, though, being is if you don't use that cash in a wise way, what ends up happening is you just devalue the stock. If you can use the cash in a smart way that will eventually make you more money in the future, it's not so much dilutive. So I know people freak out about dilution, and it's happened with Ethereum, it's happened with many other tickers, but if you can use the cash smartly, then it's not like the end of the world. The stock twits page for BBIG is a show. I don't add it to others, so I don't comment, but it's a madhouse there. Yeah, here's the deal. I tried really hard to help the BBIG community, and in fact, if you go back and type in the BBIG, I guess it's under the research and stocks. If you actually pull up the BBIG TYDE section and you type in my name, you will literally hear me talking about just all the things that I was having an issue with BBIG. And it wasn't me being negative. It was just like common sense stuff. Like, you're burning through a ton of cash. Your leadership seems to be just like out of control. and then this hostile takeover. Like, you're a publicly traded company. Like, keep this stuff in house. I don't want to hear about it. Like, yeah, I mean, it's just. And the problem is this: I wrote articles about dilution. I wrote articles about warrants, and I was banned from their community. Like, and I know somebody wrote me and they were like, listen, I've been in the BBIG community for a long time, and I never saw your post about dilution, but then I found your channel, and I sold. Yeah, I didn't want them to sell the shares. Like, they made that choice, obviously, but they, for the first time ever, learned what warrants were and what dilution is, and they were like, I had no idea. And I said, well, I tried posting on there, and I even wrote an article on like the main short squeeze, and I got downvoted like into oblivion because BBIG holders were very angry that this Ethereum guy was talking about their stock. I was just trying to explain that you can't say warrants are FUD. That's real. Like, literally, dilution is real. Like, it happened to Ethereum as well. Like, it's not like it just happens to this one ticker. It's happened to a lot of tickers. And I tried to like do my best to get that information out there to them, and they literally banned me from their sub. So I did my best to just post it online, and if people read it, great. If not, but I got like downvoted into oblivion by just calling out the fact that there were warrants on BBIG, which there were, and there still are. Like, you can read all these things, right? They've all these updates on the stock, but look, like, these are warrants, and they're it's frustrating. Yeah, Anon is always fun. Just remember that. Like, I don't know how to fix, obviously, the reputation, but like, I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm trying to make sure that people understand how this stuff works. And like, unfortunately for, those shareholders, they didn't get a fair shake at like, like, I wrote the mods and I was like, what? Like, guys, these are real. And Laser, I don't know if you guys remember Laser from the BBIG community. He was like cast out for saying that he was going to sell his shares and that there were warrants, which meant that there was limited upside. And he was like shunned, and everyone like hated him. But like, he was the only one that wrote me back and was like, dude, I looked into what you were talking about, and you're right. Like, and I was like, yeah, like, I'm not lying. There are warrants. Like, you can look them up in a filing. And I posted those filings, and then I was banned. Like, that shouldn't be a thing. Like, if you can't talk about, like, warrants and, like, what the stock is doing, that's not a good thing. In fact, those mods are actually doing damage to their own community. So, I mean, like, I don't know any of these like mods anymore on BBIG. I've been out of that stock for a while as far as like interacting with them. I feel for them because I feel like this is not right. But, can't do anything about it now. All right. Does BBBY have any warrants? That's a good question, because obviously that would be something that would be very, very interesting to find out. So let's pull it up. So dilution does not matter for this one. All right, so let's try this. Pull up a 10Q. Control F. Warrants. I see warranties. No, it looks like there are no warrants on BBIG. Let me just double check. Warranties. Okay. Yeah, no warrants on BBIG. literally the very next sentence on the one stock I owned. Hold on. I'm just reading. If you see their SEC filings, the CEO and CFO are disposing shares. In the next sentence, they're awarding themselves. They deserve jail time. Yeah, I mean, random. I think you and I are on the same page as this, as far as like you and I both recognize there's very much a disconnect with Wall Street and like how they treat their shareholders. So yeah. If BBBY squeezes, is there any sympathy squeeze? Not for Tyrion per se. It depends on who's short. Like, you have to remember, like, everything matters on who's short and who's long. So, like, did I say BBBY or BBBIG or BBIG? All right. I'm going to wake up. Hold on a second. I'm going to get my last glass of scotch, and we'll continue. Yeah. Too many stocks, too many tickers that are very close in name. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. I said BBIG when I meant BBBY. Sorry. Apologize. I've obviously had a couple cocktails, and thank you for correcting me. Salute. Cheers. Okay. So I got my scotch. All right. I don't see Muffin Man. That's going to be a running joke in the Discord soon. Well, I said Muffin Man, so I got a drink now. All right. So I don't see any warrants on BBBY. Yes, BBIG has warrants, and a ton of them. But I don't see any on this. So that looks pretty safe for right now. I mean, these guys have a gamma squeeze going on right now. Like, I mean, if you look at this, this is on the weekly. I'll put it on the daily. This is gamma. Like, once it breaks through too, like, there's little to stop it. They'll probably have to do something to, like, break that up, because I don't know how they stop this thing. Like, it can get out of control pretty quickly. Like, you're going to see, like, margin calls coming from this thing if it keeps running the way it is. Because I was looking at the options chain on this thing, and it was getting insane. Here we go. Let me pull up BBBY. And they were trying to make up, like, a bunch of stories on it. I'm like, no. Like, this thing's... Wow. Oh, my God. This thing looks like GameStop. Okay. I'm going to screenshot it and bring it over for you guys to look at. This thing's insane. Wow. This is just the weekly. So I'm just going to show you guys the weekly up to $42. But this thing looks insane. All right. Zoom in so you guys can see. But look at this. That's K. Like, that's 58,000 contracts at $15 a share for the strike price. This is just this week. This is including all the other stuff that's built up that's in September, October, November, January. That's an insane amount of volume. Like, and there's nothing on the put side. There's like nothing on the put side. Like, no, I take that back. There is stuff on the put side, but compared to like 58,000, like look at this. On the other side, you've got like, and let's pretend this is all bearish. And let's pretend this is like even like 60, 70%. That's a ton. Look at the open interest there already. They're going to have to hedge all these deep in the money stuff things too. Like, this is going to get out of hand. I thought Ryan Cohen buying these like really out of the money calls was ridiculous, but now that I'm looking at it, I mean, this is a gamma ramp. This is what Ethereum looked like before like the market crashed and everything went sideways. Like, not obviously these numbers are even bigger, but like, holy crap, like that's a lot of open interest that was open today. Let's see what it transfers over tomorrow and see what the actual numbers are, but man, that's a lot. Yeah, Ryan Cohen has $80 2023 calls. Like, I'm sure he was just playing those for an IV spike, but wow. Like, this is nuts. Look at August 26. All right. I'm getting tired. I got to wrap this up soon, but in the meantime, I will at least pull up. I'm guessing it's higher. It's hard to see. Let's see. Options chain for the 26. Yeah, it's not as high as this week, but it's still very, very loaded, especially on the call side. All right. All right, guys, I'm going to have to wind it down because I was going to say I am tired beyond belief. I'm like falling asleep here. So, yeah, calls got super expensive. Puts are cheap right now. So we'll see how fast it falls. But, like, they're going to probably move a little bit more because they got to, like, delta hedge. They got to delta hedge a bunch. So. And on squinting at the string trunk, blaming his tiredness. Yeah, pretty much. What do you think the BBBY and GME basket connection? I don't think he exercises his calls. I think he's probably playing those for an IV spike, to be honest with you, patient. What I mean by that is, so when you buy a deep out of the money option, especially call option, right? As the IV spikes, you're going to be profitable on that thing, even if it doesn't get close to your actual strike price. So what ends up happening is, if he knew that there was going to be some sort of spike similar to GME, he could buy those $80 options really, really cheap. They would have been literally pennies on the dollar. And then what ends up happening is, when you run up from, like, 5 to, like, obviously 15, 16, that's a massive spike inside. So you're able to actually pull out at that point with, like, really good profits. And you don't need to hold to $80. You can basically make a ton of money with it running from basically 4, 5, 6 to, like mid-teens, even 20. So BBBY is this. So the smartest thing to do was to buy back when it was accumulating. Now it's already moved. So the question is, how much more will it go before it gets pushed down? Because they're going to find a way of pushing this thing down. I'm just telling you guys, the market it's not fair, and it... sorry. The market is not fair, and it doesn't care what you guys have planned. So, yeah, I think we have a good group here. Yeah, the community started around Ethereum, but at the same time, I think we've grown into a space where we're pretty comfortable talking about other stocks and trying to just make money where we can, doing things a smart way. And okay, what I'm gonna do now is I hear my son stirring on the monitor. Let's see if I'm being too. All right, so I'm gonna give you guys if you're not part of the Discord, it's free. I invite you guys to come hang out with us. There's a lot of fun people in there. Most of them are in the stream as well. But I was gonna say, come join us. See if you can help. The biggest goal I have for the Discord is for people to be educated, not just by myself, but other people. If I can create a space where, we have great mods to keep the community going, if we can have knowledgeable people who can share their information with others, that's the whole idea behind this whole thing. Like, I could care less, about the actual positions, all this stuff. If you can learn some stuff from people who've been around the market for a while, you can learn, and ask questions like, how did you get to this point? How did you get there, right? Like, that's the goal for the Discord, is to become kind of self-sustaining, where you have a bunch of knowledgeable traders all sharing their information and trying to figure things out as a group. We've got CPAs now that are helping out with this. I think we're creating something special here, and I know it's slow going, and it's not like, we're not going to be 10,000 users overnight. But at the same time, we went from literally just Ethereum people to a bunch of people who, generally I think get along and like each other, and, in a matter of a year. That's pretty impressive. This all started out in September or October of last year with me just inviting a couple people from, Ethereum that were talking to me on Reddit. And now we've got almost 4,000 people in the Discord. So, and I appreciate everyone's help in keeping it running smooth. And, that's our goal, is if we can help educate people, that's the only point that there's ever been. I know other people have been like, yeah, you need to charge money for this thing. And I'm like, no, the whole point of this was supposed to be always that it was a free Discord server that was going to be focused on education, making sure people learn things. And, I'm not, right all the time, but I feel like I can at least ask the right people now, especially if I have questions on certain things. When I went to invest in DTC, I checked with a CPA and 2 accountants, that have obviously good backgrounds, and, asked them their risk and what they thought. And, I think they think it's a good idea. And so, I've invested some money in there in that particular ticker, but if we can get just a tiny bit of production out of that, that's awesome. I'm just reading through comments. No nudes in the chat. You guys can DM each other your nudes. Yeah. You guys are getting weird. I'm going to go to bed. But I love you guys, and I promise tomorrow I'll be probably, obviously less loose, and we can just focus on individual tickers again, doing what we have to need to do. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with me and letting me drink a couple more drinks. The golf was fun. I appreciated doing that for the first time in a while. So make me consider buying out of the money calls on BBBY. If you're going to do that, what you want to do is you want to make sure you play IV spikes. This is financial advice, but I'm just throwing it out there. You want to look for IV spikes. So if you're going to buy out of the money options, Don't get greedy. Don't think it's going to hit 80. If you make some, good percentages on it, that's where you probably want to take profits. Not that that's financial advice. Just throwing it out. All right, guys. You guys have a wonderful evening, and I will catch you tomorrow.